The drop ship hummed with the deep, resonant thrum of its engines, vibrating through the reinforced plating of the hull. Sergeant Darius Kane sat in silence, adjusting the straps of his harness, feeling the weight of his rifle secured to his chest. Around him, the rest of the squad mirrored his quiet intensity, each soldier lost in their own thoughts. The only sound besides the ship's hum was the occasional crackle of comms and the rhythmic clicking of weapons being checked and rechecked. This was supposed to be a routine operation, another deep space extraction mission. At least that's what Command had told them. Infiltrate an abandoned research facility, neutralize whatever monstrosities were lurking inside, and secure the classified cargo. But Darius had been on too many of these routine missions to believe in anything simple. Something about this job felt different. The briefings were vague, the details inconsistent. And most of all, the footage they'd seen of the facility before departure. Grainy, flickering images of shadowy figures moving behind reinforced glass unsettled him in a way he couldn't quite explain. He glanced to his right, where Lieutenant Vega sat, her fingers drumming against her thigh. She was the only one who outranked him, and the only person on this mission he trusted completely. A career soldier like him, Vega had spent years fighting the worst nightmares the galaxy had to offer. Unlike some of the others, who relished in the brutality of their assignments, Vega saw war for what it was, a necessary evil. Her jaw was clenched, and her sharp eyes flicked toward him, confirming that she felt it too. Something was wrong. Across from them, Corporal Ellis muttered under his breath, fidgeting with a blade he kept for close encounters. His nervous energy filled the cramped space, but no one told him to stop. Next to him, Kieran Holt sat with his arms crossed, his heavy frame relaxed, but his eyes betrayed a readiness for violence. The rest of the squad, 6 in total, were equally capable, trained killers with years of combat experience. And yet, as the drop ship neared the facility, a collective unease had settled over them, thick as smoke. The pilot's voice crackled over the comms. ETA 3 minutes. We're coming in cold. No heat signatures on approach, but that could mean the system's fried. Be ready for anything. Darius exhaled slowly. No heat signatures meant no signs of life or something worse. The ship shuddered as it entered the facility's airlock. The transition was smooth, practiced, but as soon as the exterior doors sealed shut behind them, the interior bay doors groaned open to reveal a corridor coated in dust and decay. The metal walls bore deep gashes, as if something had tried to claw its way out. Light panels flickered overhead, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. Weapons up, they moved forward in formation, boots crunching softly against the floor. The air was stale, tinged with the metallic scent of old blood and something else, something faintly chemical. The first few rooms were empty, long-abandoned workstations covered in layers of dust. Broken terminals flickered with half-dead screens, displaying corrupted data streams. Then they found the first body. It was human, or at least it had been. The corpse was slumped against the wall, its uniform marking it as facility security. Deep gashes ran along his torso, ribs exposed where something had torn through his armor. His face was frozen in a rictus of horror, his hands curled as if trying to claw away an unseen nightmare. Ellis swore under his breath. What the hell did this? Darius knelt beside the body, examining the wounds. No plasma burns, no clean cuts, this was raw brutality. Whatever had done this had used claws, teeth, or something just as primal. His gaze shifted to the walls, where streaks of dried blood led deeper into the facility. Vega motioned them forward. Stay sharp. Keep eyes on every angle. They advanced deeper into the corridors, past shattered glass panels and overturned equipment. The deeper they went, the more evident it became that something had gone terribly wrong here. Then they reached the containment wing. Rows of cylindrical tanks lined the walls, reinforced glass streaked with condensation. The overhead lights buzzed dimly, illuminating shadowy figures within each chamber. At first, they thought the containment cells were empty, but then a hand pressed against the glass from the inside. The squad tensed, rifles raised. But what they saw next sent a ripple of confusion through them. The creature inside the chamber wasn't the grotesque abomination they had been expecting. It was humanoid, delicate in structure, with smooth, pale skin and large, luminescent eyes that shone in the dim light. A girl, or something close to one. She looked fragile, her expression a mix of fear and desperation. Behind her, more figures stirred in the other chambers, all similar in appearance. They weren't the monstrous creatures described in the mission briefings. They weren't killers. They were prisoners. Vega exhaled sharply. This wasn't in the damn briefing. Ellis stepped closer to the nearest tank, his fingers hovering over the control panel. Command told us this place was overrun with hostiles. They didn't say a damn thing about this. Darius felt something tighten in his chest. He had killed plenty of things in his time, but he had never pulled the trigger on something that looked so human. The girl pressed her hand against the glass again. Her glowing eyes locked onto his. There was no malice there, only pleading. Then the alarm screamed to life. Red warning lights flashed across the walls, and the facility trembled as ancient machinery came back online. Doors slammed shut, locking them in. Automated turrets whirred to life in the ceiling corners, their barrels pivoting toward the squad. And then, from the far end of the corridor, something moved. Not the girls in the chambers. Something else. A shape emerged from the shadows, taller than any human, its limbs elongated, its eyes burning with something far less human. It let out a guttural, inhuman sound that sent a shiver down Darius's spine. The mission had just changed. This wasn't an extermination. This was a cover-up. And now they were part of it. The alarm's shriek echoed through the facility, reverberating off the cold metal walls as the squad shifted instantly into defensive positions. Darius felt his pulse spike as his instincts took over, rifle trained on the towering figure that had emerged from the shadows. The creature stood unnaturally still for a moment, its elongated limbs twitching, its glowing eyes locked onto them with a disturbing intelligence. Then, with inhuman speed, it lunged. Contact! Vega's voice rang out as gunfire exploded through the corridor. Bullets tore into the creature's form, but it barely staggered. It moved like liquid shadow, weaving between the storm of projectiles, its grotesque limbs propelling it forward. Ellis fired a high-impact round, the concussive blast knocking it back momentarily, giving them precious seconds to reposition. Darius glanced toward the containment tanks, where the alien girls recoiled, their glowing eyes wide with fear. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't the same as the beings in the chambers. This thing was something else, something twisted, something wrong. Kieran, fallback position now. Vega barked, already moving to cover the squad's retreat. They were out in the open, too exposed. If more of these things were lurking deeper in the facility, they needed to find a defensible position fast. The creature recovered, letting out a bone-chilling screech as it lunged again. But this time, it wasn't aiming for them. It slammed into one of the containment tanks, claws raking against the reinforced glass, sending a web of cracks spiraling outward. No, 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 Ellis swore, pivoting his aim. It's trying to. The glass shattered. Fluid cascaded onto the floor as the fragile girl inside collapsed forward, her limbs trembling from prolonged stasis. The creature was on her in an instant, skeletal fingers reaching, its mouth, a grotesque, inhuman thing filled with shifting teeth, opening in anticipation. Darius didn't think. He moved. His blade was out before he registered the action, and in a fluid motion, he drove it up into the thing's exposed side. The creature shrieked, its body convulsing, but it didn't go down. It twisted unnaturally, its hollow eyes snapping to him, and Darius felt the weight of something ancient pressing against his mind. A presence that whispered of hunger, of suffering, of a darkness that had existed long before humanity had reached the stars. Then Vega was there, her rifle pressed against the thing's skull, and she pulled the trigger. The head snapped back in a spray of dark, viscous matter, and this time, it collapsed. For a moment, only the sound of heavy breathing and the distant wail of the facility's alarms filled the space. The girl, drenched in cryofluid, her delicate form barely able to support itself, gazed up at Darius with wide, luminous eyes. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of what had been hunting her. Darius exhaled sharply and pulled her up. She trembled against him, her skin cold to the touch, but she clung to his arm with surprising strength. More movement in the other tanks. Others were stirring, their eyes darting frantically, their hands pressing against the glass in silent desperation. "We can't leave them," Ellis said, breathless, his usual bravado stripped away. "They weren't the threat. Command lied to us." Darius already knew that. He had suspected it from the moment they stepped into this place. But seeing it with his own eyes, seeing the sheer terror in these girls, no, these people, he understood the full weight of the deception. Vega didn't argue. "Fine, but we're doing it fast." Ellis and Kieran moved quickly, disengaging the cryo locks on the other chambers. One by one, the girls stumbled free, blinking at the harsh artificial light, each one looking more fragile than the last. Their forms were eerily human, too human for what Command had labeled them. They had the same nervous tics, the same micro-expressions, the same unmistakable need for survival. The walls trembled again, and a new sound rumbled from the depths of the facility. Something guttural, something hungry. "We need to move." Vega's voice was tight. Darius pulled the girl forward, and she followed without resistance. She trusted him, though he had no idea why. Maybe because he had stopped her execution. Maybe because, in this moment, he was the closest thing she had to a chance at freedom. They moved quickly through the corridors, keeping low, keeping quiet. The deeper they went, the more they saw. More bodies, more destruction. But something else, two records, data logs left behind in the chaos. Vega yanked a drive from a half-functioning terminal, stuffing it into her gear. "If we make it out of here," she murmured, "we're going to expose this." They reached an access hatch, but as Darius moved to open it, the girl at his side gripped his wrist. Her fingers were delicate, her skin strangely warm now, but her eyes, those otherworldly, glowing eyes, stared into his with intensity. She shook her head. Then, with effort, she whispered, "Not that way." Darius stiffened. The first words she had spoken. Her voice was soft, lilting, but the warning in it was unmistakable. Vega hesitated. "Then which way?" The girl pointed. Toward the maintenance corridors, toward the unlit, forgotten passages that led even deeper. Ellis cursed. "That's a death trap." But Darius trusted her. He didn't know why, but he did. "This place was built to contain them," he said. "If they know the layout better than we do, we follow their lead." No one liked it, but they didn't argue. They slipped into the darkness, their movements silent, the alien girls keeping close. They weren't defenseless. Darius could see it now. They moved with a cautious grace, their bodies adjusting quickly despite the disorientation. Whatever they were survivors. The tunnels were tight, twisting, ancient. The air grew heavier, thick with the scent of damp metal and something else, something organic. The girl guiding him placed a hand on the wall, her brow furrowing. Then she looked up sharply. "They wake," she whispered. A tremor ran through the facility. Then the walls screamed. The sound wasn't mechanical. It was alive, raw. An unearthly shriek that reverberated through the metal like a living pulse. The shadows shifted. Shapes began to move, emerging from the darkness with jagged limbs and hollow eyes. Not just one. Not just a few. Dozens. They had been sleeping, waiting. And now they were awake. Vega didn't hesitate. "Run." They ran. The girl in Darius's grip stumbled, her strength failing. Without thinking, he scooped her into his arms and kept running. Then the path split. Vega skidded to a halt. "Which way?" The girl pressed a trembling hand to his chest, her voice urgent despite its weakness. "Left." They didn't question it. The moment they turned, the air changed. The walls became smoother, the metallic scent fading into something else, fresh, open. And then, suddenly, the corridor ended. A hangar, a ship, an escape. Kieran was the first to react, sprinting for the controls. "I can get it running." Darius turned, just in time to see the creatures halting at the threshold. They did not cross. They hissed, retreated, their hollow eyes flickering. And then, as if bound by some unseen force, they melted back into the darkness. The girl in his arms exhaled, relief washing over her features. The facility had been their prison, but it had also been a cage for the real monsters. And now they knew why Command had wanted it destroyed. The ship's engines roared to life, vibrations shuddering through the metallic frame as Kieran worked furiously at the controls. The flickering emergency lights overhead cast a ghostly glow across the hangar, illuminating the group as they scrambled to secure themselves. Darius kept his rifle trained on the entrance, though the creatures had not pursued them past the threshold. They lingered in the shadows, watching with unblinking, hollow eyes, their grotesque forms barely visible against the dark. The alien girl in his arms trembled slightly, but she no longer seemed afraid. Instead, she studied the creatures with something akin to sorrow, as if she understood them in a way none of the squad could. Darius felt an unspoken weight settle in his chest. Whatever had been done here, these beings had not always been monsters. "We've got power," Kieran announced, his fingers flying across the console. "But this thing hasn't been flown in ages. It's gonna be rough." Vega didn't hesitate. "Rough is better than dead. Take us up." The landing gear groaned as the ship lurched upward, metal grinding against metal as dust and debris shook loose from the long dormant structure. The moment they lifted, the creatures in the corridor recoiled, their skeletal forms twisting away as if the very air repelled them. "Doors are sealed," Ellis called out. "We're clear to." A new alarm blared, sharp and urgent. Kieran cursed under his breath. "No, no, no. Something's overriding the..." The ship bucked violently as unseen forces slammed into it, not from outside, but from within the hangar itself. Darius gripped the nearest support, heart hammering. What the hell was that? The girl beside him looked up, her glowing eyes dark with something heavy. "The station does not want us to leave." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Vega grabbed the comms unit and barked, "I don't care if the whole damn place comes alive. Get us out of here, Kieran." The engines flared, blue fire searing against the platform as Kieran pushed the thrusters to their limit. The ship shuddered, metal screaming in protest, but it surged forward, wrenching itself free of the hangar's unseen grip. Outside, the facility loomed below them, a sprawling nightmare of steel and shadow, its twisted architecture barely visible through the thick clouds of dust kicked up by their departure. The onboard sensors flickered erratically, struggling to make sense of what they had just escaped from. "We're in open air," Ellis exhaled, slumping back against his seat. "Jesus." Darius barely had time to process it before the girl at his side collapsed. He caught her before she hit the floor, her frail form too light in his arms. Her breathing was shallow, her skin clammy. Panic surged in his gut. "She's burning up." Vega knelt beside them, her expression tight. "Kieran, get us to altitude. Ellis, see if there's a medkit somewhere. Now." The ship leveled out, but the shaking didn't stop. Not from turbulence, but from the girl herself. Her glowing eyes flickered weakly as she clutched at Darius's arm, her fingers barely able to grasp the fabric of his sleeve. "They won't let me." Her voice was barely a whisper, yet it carried an unnatural weight. Darius tightened his hold on her. "Who won't let you?" She struggled for breath, and then, with an effort that seemed to cost her everything, she turned her head toward the view screen. Darius followed her gaze. The facility below was changing. The metal warped and twisted, its skeletal framework shifting like something alive. For a moment, the entire station pulsed, as though it were taking a breath. Then, from its depths, something massive began to rise. A low, resonant hum filled the air, and suddenly, the ship's systems flickered wildly, alarms shrieking as displays filled with unreadable warnings. Ellis swore. "What the hell is that?" The girl shuddered violently against Darius. "It is waking." Kieran fought with the controls. "We need to move now." Vega's jaw clenched. "Take us out of orbit." But the ship was struggling. The unseen force from before was returning, clawing at them, dragging them back toward the station as if it refused to release its prey. Darius turned back to the girl. "What do we do?" Her breathing was ragged. "Take me to the center." Vega's eyes narrowed. "You can't be serious." But Darius didn't hesitate. He lifted the girl into his arms and turned to the airlock. "We don't have a choice." The others exchanged looks, but in the end, no one argued. The next few moments passed in a blur. Gears locking into place, hatches opening, the rush of wind and gravity pulling at them as they descended back into the nightmare. The ship held its position just long enough to deploy them before it was forced back, leaving the squad stranded on the facility's outer scaffolding. The girl stirred weakly in Darius's arms, her strength nearly gone. "The heart? Take me there." They moved fast, navigating the shifting corridors as the facility's monstrous form pulsed around them. Whatever was happening, it was accelerating. The walls seemed less like metal and more like flesh, the air thick with something that wasn't quite mist, wasn't quite smoke. And then they reached it, a vast chamber, pulsing with energy, its core a mass of shifting light and shadow. It wasn't machinery, it was something else, something ancient, something alive. The girl weakly extended a hand. They were never meant to be monsters. Darius felt the weight of her words. This wasn't just a prison. It had been a place of creation, of experimentation gone wrong. The creatures they had fought were byproducts, failed attempts at something greater. And now, she was the last of whatever had been meant to exist. She turned her glowing eyes to him one last time. "You have to let me go." His hands tightened around her, his instincts screaming against it. But he understood. Slowly, painfully, he set her down. She stepped forward, her frail body trembling as she reached the core. The moment her fingers touched it, light engulfed her, searing, blinding. Then silence. The facility shuddered one last, dying breath. And then it collapsed. Darius barely registered the sensation of being pulled upward, of Vega and Ellis dragging him away, of the ship's emergency beacon locking onto their signal at the last possible second. By the time they broke atmosphere, the facility was gone. Only silence remained. No one spoke for a long time. Then Kieran whispered, "Did we win?" Darius stared out into the empty void. He didn't know.